Snoop Dogg.
Snoop Dogg. He took his kid to see a movie. Do you know what movie? He ended up saying some pretty bad remarks about the movie and the production.
I didn't come in for this. They putting it everywhere.
So there's something in the news that caught my attention.
Snoop
today.
Dogg.
Snoop Dogg. He's not a frequenter of the news lately, but this kind of caught my attention, and I thought it was really interesting. He took his kid to see a movie. Do you know what movie?
Lightyear?
Lightyear.
I've never
I
even
think
heard
it's
of
Lightyear.
the movie, but is it about Buzz Lightyear?
It's about Buzz Lightyear. So he ended up saying some pretty bad remarks about the movie and the production by the LGBT stuff that was put in it.
Okay.
I thought it was kind of interesting. So I want to kind of discuss a little bit of this. And this made me think about years ago, we kind of talked about this 10 plus years and probably haven't brought up some of these situations. So I dug up an old presentation and I'm going to show you this because I want you to see how it's progressed.
Okay.
Like this is way back when we said it would go in this direction, and where are we today?
Yep.
But this article right here with the Entertainment Tonight says Snoop Dogg, he criticizes the LGBT and representation in the children's films, and he says they're putting it everywhere. And I mean, this was all over. Variety is something from Hollywood. And he said, these are kids. We have to show that to this age.
I agree with him. I mean, I was just doing some research for a show. I'm trying to work on a show about Sabrina Carpenter, giving that away early. But I remembered you guys know who Bob Pittman is? So I don't know if he still is, but is the kind of like this big dog for MTV. And he said something like, we get their emotions going. We've got them. So like I got them hooked to my music, and you as parents back off. And it's the same thing that's happening here in all these movies. Like Coco Melon, Kendi, who used to be a host on our channel, she did a video on that, went pretty viral. So it's literally everywhere, and I think it's very purposeful.
What I think is funny is the people who make a living off of TV and sliding things in there. I don't know if you saw the performance they did during the Super Bowl. I mean, there's all kinds of sexual
Which one are you referring to? Because there's many.
That's true.
Yeah.
It was maybe a couple of years ago when he did one with Dr. Dre and all those guys. And I mean, they were doing their old songs, but I mean, it was very full of sexual things. And it's like, usually the Super Bowl has a lot of kids watching it to begin with. So I find it interesting that he would even mention something like this.
Yep.
But I want to show you a couple things. You guys know who Edward Bernays is? We've talked about him on our channel before.
Yeah.
So this was a comment that Edward...
Well, who is he?
Okay, Edward Bernays is Sigmund Freud's nephew. And during one of the world wars in the very beginning, he actually used the propaganda machine that he had learned from his uncle, and he taught the American companies how to take their industries that were making all this war stuff and turn it into machines that would make stuff for the population. So he was
marketing, early marketing.
Yeah, I mean, he really, the country at this point was only buying things that they needed. And he flipped everybody into this, well, you need to buy this thing before your other thing wears out.
Right.
That was kind of what he wrote. But listen to what he says. Keith, go ahead and read this.
The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. This is a logical result of the way in which our democratic society is organized.
All right. This presentation here is going to come with a little bit of a warning, and the warning is for all you young people that watch our channel. Thank you for paying attention to our channel, but you might want to go and get your parents and have them watch this show before you watch the show. We're going to talk about some things that are put out into a lot of kids' things, a lot of sexual things. Yep. And so we just want to give you that forewarning. Please go ask your parents if they say that it's okay to watch this. You guys can go ahead and continue watching. But if you're too young, please have your parents watch this before we do.
Yep.
So this is interesting that they have, since the early onset of our country, recognized that they can control the direction of where people are going with this thing called propaganda. And if
That's
you
right.
just put it in things and people don't recognize it, it can have a profound effect on you.
Subliminal messages.
Subliminal messages. To illustrate that, this is something that we used when we
forgot
would
about
talk
that.
with lots of kids. So
Yep.
what you're seeing on the screen right now is an image to illustrate what subliminal advertising is all about. Now, there is something sexual about this picture. So I'm going to give you just a second to look at this. And clearly it's talking about the birds and the bees.
Right. I mean, my first thing was like, is it just a bunch of flowers? And then I see a bee in the bottom. But what am I supposed to
haven't
see?
seen this one before?
You haven't seen this picture.
I've not seen
Oh,
this
I've seen
picture.
this
Okay, so
picture.
this is.
Am I
yeah.
not an adult? Am I supposed to see something like sexual that I'm not seeing?
You'll get
or-
it in a second.
If
Okay,
you
okay.
look in between the birds and the bees, if you draw a line from the bird to the bee, then you would see that there is the
I
word sex
see
that is
it.
written in the flowers.
Wow.
And this was something that early when our ministries kind of started, we would point these things out that, these were on various products. And you've heard the term sex
Dude.
sells. And
Yep.
there's a reason why. Pepsi had a whole line of drinks that had the word sex written on the side. You would not have seen that if the cans would not have been stacked up. So that's pretty intentional, pretty sly if you put it like that. But there it is right there on the side of the can. There's the word sex. Now, here's another product right here that I thought was
yeah.
a little bit more
Yeah,
obvious.
I've seen this before.
I still use this one.
Yeah,
Wow.
this is something that maybe was in a foreign country. I don't know if we have. This is obviously a picture of a foreign.
What do you mean, like they just didn't know English or something? Or
There's one of an Axe soap where it's like a dragon at the top in the shape of an S, and then down below it is so you have it.
Yeah, so I just want to show a couple of
yeah,
these.
yeah.
There was a couple of bottles here. Now, a lot of kids use Axe soap. If you've seen their commercials, this is not a huge
Yeah.
stretch. Like
No.
this is like very much so in their marketing ploy.
Yeah.
But the one on the right is kind of an interesting image. What does it say on the top there, Danique? The one on the right.
33% more plus. I don't.
What do you get 33% more of? The girl? These things are subtly, and when you see things like that, you're going to link those two ideas together.
Right.
And the reason to show you this is they will often use this tactic when they sell a car. Why do they put a beautiful girl in the advertisement of the car? What does the girl have anything to do with the function of the car?
Nothing.
Zero.
Does it drive further? Does it drive faster? Does it
Nope.
go like without mechanical problems if you have a girl in the
Right.
car? It's
Nope.
because it's pressing that chemical button inside your brain.
I actually remember I used to study journalism many years ago, which was my introduction to media and how I got involved with this kind of stuff. But I remember taking a class. I don't even remember what the class was about, but they were talking about this. And they were talking about the same concept of World War II, but before products were sold, and there were advertisements, but they were sold looking at how practical they were, how they would enhance your life, right? Like, if you buy this soap bar, you will be clean. Like a simple thing like that. Whereas now, it's all about emotion. And I don't know if this was something that Little Light presented many years ago, or it might have been in Scott Ritzma's Media on the Brain, but there was a guy presenting, talking to an audience about, how to sell products emotionally. And he said, Harley Davidson.
Oh yeah.
Harley Davidson sells an emotion.
Yeah, that's in
it's
one
an
of our videos.
experience.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
like, like driving on that motorcycle, maybe with, with your lady behind you on the back seat, and you're feeling the wind through your hair and all these different things. Like, it's an emotional experience. It's not just, I'm going to ride a motorcycle to get to work faster.
That's right.
Nothing to do with that.
And what people don't realize is the difference between a commercial that is sold in any other time of the day or any prime time or any night. Why are Super Bowl commercials sold for so much more?
I mean, everybody's watching,
Eyeballs.
You are all eyeballs is one of the reasons, but you are in a higher state of emotion when you are
Yes.
invested in a game that's like, is my team going to win or is my team going to lose? That's different than most people sit down and watch television just normally.
Yep.
And so the more emotional experience you're having, the better they can sell those products to you. In fact, that was to illustrate the idea that you sell to people's emotions. That's what you're doing.
Right.
So I think this is very interesting, even discussing like movie and violence and sexuality and all those in the ratings. They started really kind of catching on that if they made the ratings kind of higher, that more people would want to go and watch those things. And, there's a lot of articles that are pretty interesting on this, but this particular article was looking at the amount of violent or sexual scenes. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is because if you look at the date, it says 2014. Okay, so
Yep.
when we kind of get to what are we exposed to today, I think it's even much grander than this. But listen to this: parents viewed brief pairs of movie scenes featuring either violence or sex. And after seeing the first movie clip, the parents thought that the minimum age for a movie consent should be almost 17 years old, okay? For violence, 17 years and 0.2 for sex. After watching the sixth and final scenes, the parents were more willing to let their teens see movies at 13 and a half, or almost 14 years, and 14 for sex.
Wait, that's only after watching 6 scenes?
Because they were shown 6 scenes, in just those 6 scenes, lowered their idea of how old you should be to watch those things.
So they're desensitized.
Right.
Desensitized, yeah. And you can imagine, like this article was pretty eye-opening like that. And you can see today we are exposed to an incredible amount of sexuality.
It's ratings creep, and that's part of the reason why they change out those individuals every so many years from the MPAA, is because they know that people over time will become desensitized. The problem is society as a whole is becoming desensitized.
Yep.
So you have ratings creep on a societal level on top of an individual level.
Who did you say there was like some guy who raped and murdered a bunch of women?
Charles Manson.
It was
when
him.
he was in prison, he was interviewed by James Dobson. And the interview is very fascinating. You can still find it on YouTube. He really talked about what debased his mind, and it was watching pornography that specifically had violence. And you can imagine, like something at that level, you're associating pleasure with the pain of somebody. You're causing them pain, and you're getting pleasure from it. And I'm sure that's just a quick, fast road to eroding your mind completely.
So the reason I bring it up is because I was just doing some research again on Sabrina Carpenter. A lot of her music videos are very erotic, very sensual. She's known to just be like doing all kinds of sexual acts on stage, like pretending, but it's really very visual. Performing half naked in outfits that are basically to be safe for the bedroom. And then in a lot of her music videos, it is extremely violent. Like I just watched one and for research sake, I had to turn it off because I was like, I can't handle this. This is way too much. And it had an advisory at the front as well as like advisory. What's going to happen in this? And I was like, this is way worse than I was expecting it to be. But again, it's like sexual parading around half naked, combined with violence.
Yeah. I can remember seeing a clip of Justin Timberlake when he was performing. And I mean, there would be these 13, 14-year-old girls that would be at his concert. And they were like overly, in your face sexual.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're exposing people to that. And I know Sabrina, she got her start with Taylor Swift, right?
With Disney.
Disney, yes, but she went on tour with...
She was opening for part of the Eras tour. I believe it was Australia, actually, but don't quote me on that.
But that's what kind of blew her up.
That really got her the final... she was already on her way, but that was the final hurrah, I think.
Little kids go to those concerts, you know what I mean?
Well, they do, but they shouldn't.
So I think there's a good reason why we need to be talking about this and why we're hoping that you guys as parents are listening to this information. And the purpose of this show is really to show you where they said they wanted this to go and where are we actually right now. Is it playing out like they said? There was a psychology science article that was written. And once again, this is like back from 2010, 11, 12. And it talks about the exposure to sexual content in popular movies predicts behavior in adolescence. So the more that you actually have those things in the media that they're watching will directly influence when they become sexually active as teenagers or adults.
So then they just put it in all these movies as kids kids movies, right?
Yes. So these are some pretty fascinating articles. Key findings in this particular article was saying that the sexual content is increasing, and this was written in 2005. And they said that it's up 56% from 7 years prior. Wow. And 64% grew in just 3 years. So,
and this article is from when? 2012,
This
13?
is 2013. But it's talking about where the sexual content has really kind of been driving. So
yeah, dude.
Here's some of the things you guys should do a little bit of research. But why are all of these things making it into these television shows, and how is that even happening? I remember first hearing of this guy named Ben Shapiro. This was actually some of the first videos I ever saw of him many years ago. And he was in his beginning of his experience of starting to be public with what his views were as well. He would call up some of these producers and he'd have conversations with them over the phone. So that's what this is. This is a conversation with one of the leaders from CBS. And Ben was just asking him, like, how are these things getting into these television shows, and where's this mindset coming from? Listen to what he says.
That is one of the criticisms that you hear a lot from cultural right-wingers, that Hollywood is too left, there's too much sexual content, there's one side of the agenda being pushed on a lot of shows.
There's no question about that.
Yeah.
So he is one of the guys that is choosing for CBS some of the content, and he's agreeing with him, saying, yeah, there's no question whether these left-leaning people is how this stuff is getting in here. So he asks someone else, Fred Silverman. He was also someone that worked in the industry.
Right now, there's only one perspective, and it's a very progressive perspective. And they don't even, if you want the other perspective, it's not available in comedy. Let's start there.
Okay, so he's admitting, like, look, you can't have another perspective. This is the singular perspective that a lot of these guys who work for these television shows, they're all coming from the same mindset. And so it's easy to get things into them.
Right.
Here's another one. This is one of the creators of Friends.
Now, one of the criticisms that's been made of Friends from, I would say, the cultural right wing is that it always tends to take a consistently liberal tack with regard to issues, whether it's gay marriage or whether it's...
How could it not? I mean, you have a bunch of liberals running the show. I mean, truly, we all come from a certain place. We're going to put out there what we believe because these characters mirror who we are. And, we've put together a staff of mostly liberal people.
Nothing makes God happier than when two people, any two people, come together in love. Friends, family, we're gathered here today to join Carol and Susan in holy matrimony.
Oh my, now I've seen everything.
What? The fact that they call it holy matrimony, like it's holy, it's not.
At this time that Friends was getting some, traction and was very highly watched, some of these issues were being talked about in the public of should there be same-sex marriage. And look, by putting it into the television shows, what's the result of that?
And you couch it in a little humor.
Yeah.
So it's more palatable.
Yeah.
And everybody liked Friends. I mean, that was a you know.
And this is the thing, like I grew up watching Friends. I did not grow up in any Christian environment. I grew up in a secular country. So yeah, like you're being fed these ideas. Before I became a Christian, I used to approve of gay marriage because that's what society tells you. Yeah, and you don't want to disrespect anybody, so that's what you go with.
But isn't that interesting that when Ben Shapiro was asking him, like they were like, there's not another perspective. Like even Silverman said, you can't come from another perspective. You won't get your stuff on there.
Right.
And so now it's interesting because we have like things like YouTube and, there's a lot more voices than just what was available to us at this point. But it's interesting to see where this has actually bringing it. Yeah. Here's one of the creators of a show called Desperate Housewives.
Oh, no. I watched that show too. Terrible show. Very vile, very lawless.
Yes, there was definitely some. But what's interesting is listen to what the creators, as they were designing this show, why they put gay people in the show. Listen to this.
One of the things I'm proudest about is the addition of the neighbors, the gay neighbors on Wisteria Lane, because they're a part of the neighborhood, no one seems to notice it. And I think that just having gay neighbors be a part of the street, and I don't really talk about their sexuality much.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that became its own political statement, which is, see, you can have gay neighbors and they can be perfectly fine and fit in with the rest of the folks, and it doesn't change anything. And you kind of hope that you're preparing the way, planting little seeds in the minds of people who sometime over the next few years are going to have gay neighbors buy a house on their street. And for me, that's the most effective political message, is that it's not particularly aggressive. It's just there, and it's slowly changing a perception.
So that's fascinating, because there's an article I came across from, it was, I don't remember where it was published, but it was eventually made into a book, and it was from a 1987 November article. Okay, so this is back a few years ago. It's calling The Overhauling of Straight America, which was later put into a book. And I think the guys that wrote it, one of them used a pen name, because it has by Marshall Kirk and Erastus Pill. But the opening paragraph is really interesting. It says, the first order of business is desensitization of the American public concerning gays and gay rights. To desensitize the public is to help it view homosexuality with indifference instead of with keen emotion. Ideally, we would have straights register differences in sexual preference the way they register different tastes for ice cream or sports games. She likes strawberry and I like vanilla. He follows baseball and I follow football. No big deal. Well, he goes on, and I think the second paragraph is worth reading just to see how it correlates with this. At least in the beginning, we are seeking public desensitization and nothing more. We do not need and cannot expect a full appreciation or understanding of homosexuality from the average American. You can forget about trying to persuade the masses that homosexuality is a good thing. But if only you can get them to think that it's just another thing, with a shrug of their shoulders, then your battle for legal and social rights is virtually won. And to get to shoulder shrug stage, gays as a class must cease to appear mysterious, alien, loathsome, and contrary. A large-scale media campaign will be required in order to change the image of gays in America, and any campaign to accomplish this turnaround should do 6 things. They list the 6 things. And I can't read all of them, but I can read the kind of the things that they mention. Talk about gays and gayness as loudly and as often as possible. That's number 1. Number 2, portray gays as victims, not as aggressive challengers. This is 1987, okay? Number 3, give protectors a just cause. Number 4, make gays look good. Number 5, make the victimizers look bad. And number 6, solicit funds. The buck stops here. So this goes on in detail for 10 pages.
Wow.
10 typed pages of detail, and later made into a book of how this is supposed to be done. And when you read this all in detail, you can look back and say they totally accomplished everything that they set out to do.
Yeah. It's a playbook.
Yeah, it is a playbook.
They know that if they put that constantly, like he said, in the background where it's not necessarily noticeable, but it's just there, and it's you constantly see it, that over time it will change people's public opinion.
And it's not anything that we shouldn't be surprised of. I mean, this is one of like many issues. I mean, we could single this out, but there are many issues in society that are going the direction of lawlessness. But Jesus himself said, in the last days, lawlessness will increase.
Yeah. That's right.
So it shouldn't be a surprise. We should expect it. But that just means his second coming is that much closer.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not, we are now talking about like the movie industry and all that kind of stuff. It's not just in the movie industry, even.
It's anything.
In the music industry as well. I mean, Madonna made this statement, who knows how long ago, that she said, if we keep putting it in front of these people, maybe they'll accept it, and then maybe they'll even get secretly aroused by it.
Yeah.
I mean, and she said this like back in the heyday.
Yeah.
And it's all being fulfilled.
It's very true. And we have records of how, mass public can be affected by a cultural mindset.
Yep.
I mean, you can just look at the early world wars and, Adolf Hitler, he made a statement that said, make the lie big, make it simple, keep it saying it, and eventually people will believe it.
The repeat machine.
Yeah, the repeat machine. If you say it enough times, then people, you kind of like are rewriting the script in their brain, and it's like, they'll just adopt it.
That's why I get nervous whenever I see something hitting the news.
Yeah.
I don't care what the issue is or what side it's on. If it's loud, it's big, and they just keep saying it over and over and over and over and over again, I'm like,
yeah,
it
what are you
makes
doing?
you wonder.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Well, we're talking about homosexuality kind of like getting into the mainstream and sexuality being like more and more talked about. This is something that's been around for a long time. And I can remember 10, 15 years ago when I heard that the X-Men was really like this big allegory for homosexuality. And I was like, what? No, it's not. Come on. It's the X-Men. Like these guys are like the superhero early this series kind of caught on, right? Here's something interesting about it. This is speaking about the comic books. So listen to this article was back in 2012. It says, today we're pleased to announce the mystery identity of one of the characters in question is over and appearing in Earth 2. Alan Scott is the Green Lantern of Earth 2, a team leader with a type A personality and an appetite for justice. And Alan also happens to be a homosexual. And while his origins won't be shown in full detail until issue 3, we can tease that the traumatic event will serve as a catalyst for him assuming his superhero identity as the Green Lantern. So, I mean, this was, back in the comic books well before it actually hit into the movies. And, these things kind of change the mindset over time.
I remember years ago, I did a video kind of exposing The Sims because I used to be a huge gamer, actually. Not just The Sims, but also like Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty, Need for Speed, all those things. Assassin's Creed. And so I did a video on The Sims, and it's interesting that even in that kind of culture, you see a progression where, let's say you create a family, right? And your family grows up, the kids grow up, and you say, well, I'm going to take this one persona that grew up, and I'm going to continue living, create a family, continue playing with this sim. The other Sims just start being like computerized. They just live their life in the background, right? So you're not directly controlling them anymore because you chose to play with this one. So in later versions, now your family that you left behind could now choose if they wanted to become lesbians. And that happened to my Sims. So at that point, I was kind of, at my teenage years, I was starting to become a Christian. And I remember that, my family grew up. It's like, oh, this baby here grew up to be an adult. I'm going to move on, create a new family with this one. And I was like, hey, this person that I created, I played with now became a lesbian on their own. And then I started looking into trailers and stuff. And I remember they had expansion packs. And when you pause the trailer for the expansion pack, these images flashed by of college students, lesbians and gays kissing each other, but it was so fast that you could hardly pick up on it unless you paused or slowed down the video.
And you wonder, your mind sees everything. Your mind is incredibly fast. That's why, subliminal advertising with the sexual things written in there or on the Skittles or whatever, your mind's picking that up. I mean, they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't go to such an extent to have that part of the thing if it didn't affect you. So So the way that you had read a piece that was talking about how to change that cultural mindset, one of the ways that really accelerated that in our country was through the use in a movie called Brokeback Mountain. Now, it's not that they've ever had homosexual characters before in movies, but this was the first time that you saw them as the core American cowboy. I mean, that was like hitting at the heart of what America was like standing for, and you were like really rewriting the narrative right there.
This is fascinating because remember what Madonna said, that maybe at some point they'll be secretly aroused by it. I'm not going to mention who this was, but I knew somebody that they turned this on, and I was there, And all of a sudden, when they were having this like gay sex scene, paused the movie. Hey, you should probably, not be here right now. But they watched it as a straight person, straight married person. Why? Why would you do that? Why would you have an interest in this unless we're programmed to eventually accept it or beyond,
I'm always weirded out when I'm sitting on an airplane and you see somebody that's like sitting in close proximity with you watching a movie with a completely graphic sex scene. And it's like, oh my goodness, we're like in the middle of the plane with lots of people and everyone can see all the screens. And it's like, how embarrassing. Like, it's just weird.
And I want to add, I was a child at the time, child, not in a Christian environment. So
what you described happened on a flight. I think it was this year, but it like hijacked all the screens, and it was a scene like that, and they couldn't turn it. You couldn't change it or anything as a parent, so they had to like shut the system down.
Because one person was watching it.
Well, I don't know how it came up. But like the whole thing kind of got hijacked. I don't know that somebody selected it. I think it was just like a glitch or something. But it's like, what an unfortunate glitch, right?
Wow.
But, coming at this angle, you're talking about, they're coming from the American, heart of the American, changing what this looks like. It's not just some guy who lives in the city or two guys that live in the city. They approach it from multiple angles. Like that article I read, it's so eerie that Bill Nye, many years later, talked about that. And he actually used those phrases. He talked about it being like ice cream. Mm-hmm. And I think he even mentioned strawberry as a flavor.
Yeah.
So,
we actually made a video on this.
Yes.
And we
never released it.
We didn't release it. And we didn't release it because, contrary to maybe what some of our opposers of our material think, was we love people. We don't want to just slam them or whatever. And so that was one that we really felt like, okay, it's just maybe not the right time. But anyway, so back to the Brokeback Mountain. There's a little clip showing how the intent of this film was really to change the cultural mindset on homosexuality.
You got your wife and baby.
Brokeback Mountain looks like a big, bold, manly Western movie, but instead of the usual boy meets girl romance, this film's about cowboy meets cowboy. It's one of the most forward attempts yet by Hollywood to mainstream homosexuality. David Kupelian, author of The Marketing of Evil.
It is very, very propagandistic because the entire purpose of the movie is to make homosexuality seem like something good and appealing, and to make people who are opposed to homosexuality seem to be bigots and homophobes.
There have been homosexual movies for years, but usually marketed to gay and art house audiences, but not with Brokeback.
They are marketing red state, bush country America.
The way the studio did that was by first opening it up in just 5 blue state cities where there were large built-in gay audiences, so the first showings had blockbuster numbers.
And they get these high numbers and all the buzz going, and then pretty soon it's sort of like the Emperor's New Clothes effect. We're all looking at that, even middle Christian America saying, everybody else says this movie is so great. I need to go see it to see why it's so great.
Is there an actual agenda at work here? Alan Sears and his co-author, Craig Austin, in a book called The Homosexual Agenda, warn about a complex and well-thought-out strategy to make America gay-friendly and hostile to those who resist. These Christian authors quote extensively from After the Ball, a 1989 gay manifesto that laid out this agenda. Many gays deny such an agenda exists.
There's no secret plan or even public plan at this point.
But the authors themselves discuss in the book a 1988 summit of gay leaders in Warrenton, Virginia, to agree on the agenda. These authors are a reportedly brilliant researcher into the brain, Marshall Kirk, and a Harvard-trained expert in public persuasion tactics, Hunter Madsen. The two proposed using on straight America tactics remarkably similar to the brainwashing methods of Mao Zedong's Communist Chinese, mixed with Madison Avenue's most persuasive selling techniques. The purpose of this brainwashing? Quote, using the very processes that made America hate us to turn their hatred into warm regard, whether they like it or not. First, the two proposed homosexuals and their liberal allies should desensitize heterosexuals by getting homosexuality talked about as much as possible in the straight world. Quote, the main thing is talk about gayness until the issue becomes thoroughly tiresome. You can forget about trying right up front to persuade folks that homosexuality is a good thing, but if you can get them to think it is just another thing, meriting no more than a shrug of the shoulders, then your battle for legal and social rights is virtually won.
We're talking about a demand for a behavior that not only wants to not be condemned, but to have every affirmation from every possible point that it is correct, it's good, and it's approved.
Now look at the media. There's a tidal wave of gays and gay themes. The L Word is a Showtime hit that follows the lives of a group of lesbians. #1 rated Desperate Housewives even has time for the occasional gay guy subplot.
You're gay? I'm gay.
A flamboyant homosexual is one of the main characters in the brand new series, Emily's Reasons Why Not.
He just doesn't seem gay.
I didn't seem gay before I came out.
Yeah, you did.
Heights, one of the most popular independent films of late, has a closeted gay torturing himself over whether to marry his fiancée or go off with the man he really loves. Happy Endings features another tortured young man who can't be happy till he finally faces his homosexuality. And here in the latest movie section of the Washington Post, The Family Stone, where a mom says she'd just as soon have gay kids as straight ones, The Producers, which features a wildly homosexual Broadway director, and Capote, about the famously gay writer. Another point Kirk and Mattson push: portray gays as victims of circumstance and oppression, not as aggressive challengers. Gays must be portrayed as victims in need of protection, so that straights will be inclined by reflex to assume the role of protector.
Suddenly those who choose homosexual behavior, sodomy, are victims. It's crazy.
But have homosexuals won on getting themselves seen as a persecuted minority? Turning to the movies,
the Bible is black and white.
The wildly popular Saved portrays born-again Christians as cruel homophobes trying to reprogram poor young misunderstood gays in their midst. Trembling Before God is about how Orthodox and Hasidic homosexuals are persecuted and not accepted. The Conspiracy of Silence argues some gay priests are hounded to death because they can't act out their homosexuality. And the list of gay-centered, gay-sympathetic shows goes on and on. Closeted Canadian homosexuals in Touch of Pink. Closeted Asian lesbians in Saving Face. And the good, kind, understanding homosexual next door has been seen in so many movies and TV series, he's become somewhat of a cliché. These days, some 30 regular homosexual characters are being beamed into your home by the major networks every week. As Kirk and Mattson put it, quote, the average American watches over 7 hours of TV daily. Those hours open up a gateway into the private world of straights, through which a Trojan horse might be passed. And speaking of horses, like it or not, the gay cowboys of Brokeback Mountain are playing to big crowds in a theater near you right now. Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
It's pretty subtle the way they opened it in certain markets first to get the numbers up. It's pretty smart.
Yeah.
Well, you can kind of see how, like today, I remember when this was kind of going around, you didn't hear much about trans issues or anything like that. And now it's like this seems super mild compared to what some of the stuff that's thrown out there right now. So,
yeah.
You know.
I remember doing a show on Taylor Swift, and one of her music videos, she portrays the exact same way, like all of the gay people were having a party, and then all of the Christians were portrayed as like hillbillies, who had the signs up that says Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, and they just had their tooth out, like they had a bunch of beer bottles and like, they just looked like
uneducated.
Uneducated,
yeah.
Yes.
This, I think, is why we see so much of this today, and it's people don't even bat an eye.
I think we need to hold up a standard, which is the Bible,
Yes.
right? And like God holds me to the biblical standard as much as anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So, whatever temptations or sins I struggle with, I can't just set that aside and go point fingers at other people. I mean, Jesus literally said that, you've got a board in your eye, so don't try to judge someone else for their speck in their eye. But it is about like if we encounter a homosexual person as Christians, the right way to go about it is to show Christ's love to them, because Christ loved all these people. He ate with sinners, right? But then point them to Jesus, who can give anybody a better life and set them free from sin. And not say, no, it's totally fine, you just live like that. So are you going to go walk up to a prostitute and say, no, keep living like that? You're totally, you're going to walk up to a spouse who's cheating on his wife. Keep living like that. No, you point them to Jesus, who wants to transform people's lives.
Yeah. Crazy thing is you take the 30,000-foot perspective and the devil's just trying to look, I'm going to get you either way. either I'm going to degrade society's moral values, or I'm going to come in with a bunch of legal restriction to combat that.
Yeah.
You know, and then so the flip side, the pushback is, well, we got to restrict people's rights because we need to get back to these certain values. And the next thing you know, minorities' rights are being revoked because they see things a little differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, X-Men was a movie that I didn't even consider as having much to do with it. Obviously, we saw from the comic book earlier that they were kind of putting these in the comic book stories. But I remember watching this when it came out, and this thought did not even cross my mind. But I think you'll find this very interesting. Bryan Singer's the guy here in the middle, and
Ian McKellen.
Ian also, who played Magneto. He is a open professing.
He's openly homosexual.
Yeah. So Bryan Singer's in the middle here. Ian is the guy that played Magneto. He's an open homosexual, and he was chosen to play that character for a specific reason. In fact, there's been some articles that have come out. This is a snapshot of the article, and it said that I think Ian McKellen remembers the first time that the director Bryan Singer pitched this role of Magneto to him to play the lead villain. And he says, I think that he expected that I was going to consider it a not posh enough job. And he basically says to Singer that where perfect stand-ins for this, the X-Men were perfect stand-ins for the current struggles in the LGBT people. And I thought he was right. So this is Ian being interviewed about his role.
I didn't realize that Bryan Singer was gay.
This clip that you're going to see right here is of Ian. He does something really interesting when he stays in hotels. You know that little Bible that's in the drawer there?
Yep.
Listen to what he does in those Bibles.
I was coming over here in a taxi and the cab driver said to me, so Ian McKellen, he's the one that when he stays in hotels rips the part of the Bible out that criticizes homosexuality.
Yes, it is true. It's Leviticus 18:22 that I object to. Or is it 22:18? I've always got to look it up. Thou shalt not lie with a man as with a woman. It is an abomination. And they, I think the punishment for being abominable was to be stoned to death. I don't think these are very comfortable words to have at the bedside of someone who may be passing a lonely night away from loved ones. And I think it's rather obscene and pornographic and shouldn't be there. So I remove it.
How many Bibles have you?
I've no idea. But other people do it as well. People send me evidence that they've been removing that.
Wow.
So that's pretty bold, I guess you could say.
Very bold.
Yeah, dude.
As you can tell, you know, if everybody had that kind of, you know, attitude towards the Bible, I don't like this part, I don't like that part. I mean, you'd probably whittle the Bible down to nothing. And so, you know, the Bible needs to be read within the context that it was written. Obviously, that plays into a lot of things, but this just kind of shows you a little bit about where his mindset is at in some of these Christian ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
But listen to Bryan Singer, and these two guys, Dan and Michael, they're the writers of this particular X-Men, and listen to what they said when talking about it. It's become more of a metaphor for sexual identity and orientation because it's more appropriate to look at a person and to say, are you a mutant? You can't always look at a person and know that they're a mutant just like you, so you can't look at a person and know that they are gay. So these two guys that wrote this particular episode of the X-Men, this is what they're actually discussing in this Film Freak Central.
So basically, when they say, are you a mutant, it's like almost like a symbolic reference to, are you gay?
Yes, they totally meant it as a metaphor.
Yes. This is one of the producers here. Look what he wrote. His name is Zach Stentz. He says, I helped write the movie and can tell you the gay rights allegory stuff was all put in there on purpose. So these guys are publicly stating that they've put that in there.
Kind of like Wicked with Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo. We've got some videos about that on our channel.
Very purposeful, these things make it into some of these things. Now, Bryan Singer, he was the director on Superman, and, there was a lot of Christian imagery in the Superman. And so he talks about, his allegory of Superman being like the story of Moses or being like a Christ type and stuff like that. This was written in the Hollywood Reporter. But it's very interesting. He says that he really enjoyed that it had these kind of Christ-like things because he talks about it like, I really enjoyed that because I thought that the myth of Christ is a compelling and moving story. Now, if you think the story of Jesus is a myth, you're probably not going to promote it in any sort of good way, right?
And then he's promoting homosexuality.
This is true. And so this is the scene that he was talking about putting in there that is an allegory.
This will limit you.
There's some subject matter in X-Men that's quite controversial, perhaps. It talks a lot about tolerance, talks about faith, it talks about all these different things. And Superman talks about religion a lot. I mean, quite on the nose, frankly. And yet they exist in movies that aren't seen by the select few or the critic elite. They're seen by tens of millions of people because they are those kinds of movies. For goodness sake, there's a coming out scene in X-Men 2. That movie's probably in its scope is made with the video and all that over close to $1 billion and seen by millions and millions and millions of people, and it's got a coming out scene in it.
So, when did you first know you were
a mutant?
But you cut that out.
You have to understand, we thought Bobby was going to a school for the gifted.
Bobby is the gifted.
We know that. We just didn't realize he
We
was...
still love you, Bobby. It's just this mutant problem is a little...
What mutant problem?
Complicated.
When you have a guy like Bryan, you can pretty well count on the fact that he's going to put something in it. He might be doing a franchise piece, but you can be sure that whatever he's doing, if it's a franchise, is going to have something of his own personal motivation in it.
There you go.
There you go. That's pretty much out of the horse's mouth right there.
And again, Bryan Singer's gay.
Bryan Singer has gotten in trouble over the years from his interaction with young boys. There's a lot of articles that you guys can dig on this if you want to. In fact, here's one of the boys that he sodomized, and there was some pretty crazy court cases around this particular instance. And this was put out on TMZ, and he's describing these awful things that were done to him in promising him that he would have movie parts and all this. So this we know of goes on in Hollywood, right? Did you guys ever see the thing that Corey Feldman did when he was kind of like being public about like his interactions with pedophiles?
I don't think I maybe saw bits and pieces of it, but I don't think I saw the whole thing.
Yeah, he's one of the kids that came out, right? That was like a child actor, and it was like, hey, this was.
And he said a bunch of stuff.
Yeah,
he said a bunch of stuff.
Like he was abused or knew people who were abused.
What really harmed his testimony of what went on there in Hollywood was the fact that he was asking people for money, and so they quickly threw that in his face that what he was saying was not true. But there's a lot of strong evidence that there's a lot of pedophile activity in Hollywood, and the little amount that we've been exposed to hearing about it, I'm sure it happens much more. Yeah. And so sometimes, like what Robert Redford said, so Bryan Singer's putting what his own personal life experiences are, and he's putting those in the movies, and that's how those things are getting trickled down to people and becoming these normal things. So I thought as well, here's another really interesting thing that was put in a Rolling Stone magazine, and they were talking about the Pirates of the Caribbean. You guys see that?
Most of them.
Back in the beginning, the one that Johnny Depp did way long ago. Listen to what this said in here in a July 2006 episode or article written in Rolling Stone. Danique, go ahead and read this.
Well, there was a great book I read, Sodomy and the Pirate Tradition, a very interesting book. I wasn't exactly going for that with the character, and Keith is not flamboyant in his actions. Keith is pretty stealth. But with Jack, it was more that I liked the idea of being ambiguous, of taking his character and making everything a little bit questionable. Because women were thought to be bad luck on ships, and these pirates would go out for years at a time. So there is the possibility that one thing might lead to another. You're lonely, you have an extra ration of rum, cabin boy. Oh, what?
Yeah, that's disgusting.
Dude.
It's something that...
But the same idea is propagated by Grant Morrison when he talks about Earth 1 and Wonder Woman. So he's like, so the question comes up because she lives on an island that's inhabited by women. And they ask him, like, well, were they sexually active? And he's like, well, yeah. And they're like, well, there's no guys around. And he's like, so, basically. It's like, yeah, I mean, that's what it was.
And it's interesting, like the guy that was one of the writers for Desperate Housewives, he said he's planting seeds.
Yep.
And it's interesting to me that we are actually supposed to be seed casters, right? We are to cast biblical seeds. We're supposed to plant little ideas and things in people's minds and start conversations about God, about the bigger picture, about morality, about these things that we are learning from the Bible. And, the enemy does the same thing.
Right.
He's planting seeds for his kingdom.
Yep.
And so you can see that these things, this was from a Hollywood Reporter, have taken a toll. Many more people, things like The Modern Family and Glee, that have had a lot of these. Way back when, it was only about 2% of the population. And I think right now, if you were to look up the statistic, I think it's in the teens. How many people identify as homosexual. So that's kind of alarming. We know that we have gone down this road and this has become stronger and stronger in our society. And we know that much of this has to do with putting things in the media. I think that's what's shaping our minds. And so we wanted to talk about this because of obviously Snoop Dogg bringing this up. And, here is somebody that I don't know Snoop's personal life, but I'm just going to go out on a limb here and guess that he probably doesn't care too much about a lot of the morality issues, right?
It's interesting because you think, I don't know how he's leaning politically, but like smoking pot and all those kind of things and drugs, it's a little bit more of a left-leaning thing, and then to call out this LGBTQ topic in kids. Now, I did see that he, and I don't know if this was like he's changed his mind about this, but he did put out prior saying, I'm not against the LGBTQ, I just don't want it in kids' movies. That's kind of what he was saying.
And I think so too. I would say the exact same thing about even just straight sex, right? Like, you should not be putting that in kids' things. Nobody needs to know that at that early of an age. And I think we have a lot of problems in our world due to over-sexualizing children and kids and not giving them the proper perspective. So really, we wanted to do this show. Hopefully, parents out there, take a look at where society is going. Look, if you haven't studied this out, our suggestion would be start doing some research, start getting on your hands and knees and praying. If you haven't had these conversations with your children, have these conversations before the media gets to them, because look at the type of content that gets thrown in all this media. And so it gets really confusing to young children if the proper perspective is not shown to them from the Bible. If you're wanting to raise your kids with a biblical understanding of sexuality, you're definitely getting that from the media, but it may not be in the same way. So Common Sense Media, this is something that they wrote about this back in 2020. And listen to this. Keith, can you go ahead and read this?
Kids are growing up surrounded by sexual images and messages. They're exposed to sexual imagery in advertisements, on TV, and movies, and books, and video games, and on the internet. Many of these images are played for shock value, so they often contain graphic or violent sex. Even mild shows use sexual situations for humor, and sexual humor is a mainstay of adolescent entertainment. The more prevalent sexual situations are, the more normal they seem. Highly sexual images inform kids' view of sex long before they've experienced it. Nobody wants his or her kids to learn about sex from the media. But of course, talking about sex can be awkward. Still, it's important to challenge the exaggerated notions of sex they're exposed to, as well as to share your own values to help kids develop a normal, healthy perspective about sex.
And I think this is, a lot of good advice. They're encouraging their audience. Common Sense Media takes a look at media and tries to understand, is this good for people or is this bad for people? How do you kind of see some of these things that are maybe potential blind spots and encourage people to not just sit your kid in front of the media and just let them watch whatever. These things are thrown into increasingly younger and younger and younger audiences. SpongeBob SquarePants had some terrible things in it.
We did a video on that too on Nickelodeon, SpongeBob SquarePants.
They were awful.
Yeah.
And so, it isn't just teenage things as well, but, the Bible has some really great advice on what sexuality is designed for and what the picture that the Bible gives you way back in Genesis. What does it say here in Genesis 2:24, Denise?
Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh.
So, we've heard this verse probably a lot, right? But look at this. Hold fast. What happens when you hold on to something? It's meant to bond you together.
Right.
That beautiful thing, that gift that God gave us that should be experienced in a marriage is done to bond us together, and everything's trying to break us apart.
Yep.
And so if you want your marriage to survive, I believe that a really good way is to give them the biblical picture of what that looks like. And that's a great way to start. Keith, what does this say right here? Matthew 19:4-6.
He answered, "Have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female? And said, therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate."
Amen.
And that is, I think, a big challenge in our world today.
Yeah.
Divorce is so high, and there's so many things stacked up against your marriage that will challenge your marriage. We want to give that the best opportunity that we can, and I think that we need to really start talking to our children and giving them the biblical advice. Look, God made this union to keep us together.
Amen.
And if we do it in the way that God has designed this marriage union to be, I believe that God joins those people together.
Yep.
It's very difficult to break them apart, and he's making a call right here. Don't let man separate these things. 1 Corinthians 7:2 says, "But because of the temptations to sexual immorality, each man should have his one wife, and each woman her one husband." So even in the New Testament, Paul here is saying, look, there's a lot of temptations that are going to come at you. You need to be unified together, and you will have a better chance. So Paul is saying right here, there's a lot of temptations around. And one way that we can begin to beat these temptations if we come as a unit, a threefold unit, not just two, three. Make God the third string in your marriage.
That's right.
And I believe that if you understand what the biblical principle of marriage is for, the devil has a hard time breaking that apart.
Yep. I agree.
If you like this video, like,
subscribe,
and hit the notification bell so you know when we launch new videos.
And drop a comment below, and we'll try to get back to you if we can. What?
Say that again.
No.
No, I don't know what to say.